A single father and his two young daughters are driving home from a routine day when they spot a luxury car overturned on a quiet roadside. Inside is a wealthy woman, badly injured and alone. With no hesitation, the family leaps into action, rescuing her from danger. What starts as an act of kindness quickly spirals into a life-changing journey, weaving together trust, gratitude, and unexpected bonds that neither the family nor the millionaire could have imagined. The morning sun spilled gently across the small, modest home tucked into a quiet suburban street. For most families, it would have been a picture of calm sunlight warming the kitchen, the scent of breakfast wafting through the air. But in the household of Daniel Carter and his two daughters, the morning was a controlled chaos, orchestrated by love, patience, and a lifetime of improvisation. Daniel, a man in his late 30s, had broad shoulders shaped by years of labor, not gym memberships. His hands, roughened and calloused, were evidence of the manual work he did to keep the family afloat. This morning, as he flipped pancakes on the small electric griddle, his brow was furrowed in concentration. A glance at the clock reminded him he had 10 minutes to get the girls dressed, fed, and ready for school. From the other room came the unmistakable sounds of morning mischief, giggles, squeals, and the occasional crash. His youngest, Emma, a lively 7-year-old with curls that refused to stay tamed, had evidently decided that the living room floor was an acceptable place for acrobatics. Emma, shoes on please. And no jumping on the couch. Daniel called, trying to sound firm but patient. Emma ignored him, spinning in circles with her arms outstretched, her laughter echoing against the walls. Meanwhile, her older sister, Sophie, aged 10, sat at the kitchen table, methodically attempting to braid her hair. Unlike her sister, Sophie approached life with careful thought, often trying to impose order on the chaos around her. Yet, this morning, even her measured hands trembled slightly as Emma zoomed past her chair and grabbed the last slice of toast. Daniel sighed, reaching over to rescue the toast and slide a plate in front of Emma, one slice each. You'll need energy for school, not chaos. Pancakes are better. Emma winced, her curls bouncing with every word. Sophie rolled her eyes but hid a small smile. She had learned early that arguing with Emma was an exercise in futility. Instead, she focused on tying her sneakers, the laces fighting back like stubborn little snakes. Breakfast, as it often did in their house, became a delicate balance between nourishment and negotiation. Daniel carved out moments of light humor to keep the mood from spiraling into frustration. "You know," he said, gesturing with his spatula, "if pancakes were a superpower, I'd be the hero saving breakfasts everywhere." Emma laughed, nearly tipping her chair over, while Sophie snorted, shaking her head at her father's antics. These small, fleeting moments of joy were the glue that held them together. They didn't have much, a modest home, modest salaries, and a life that required constant effort, but they had each other. And Daniel, despite the exhaustion etched into his face, found purpose and pride in raising his daughters alone. Once breakfast was consumed, the morning routine turned into a flurry of jackets, backpacks, and lost shoes. Daniel juggled school forms, lunchboxes, and the endless search for misplaced homework. Sophie, meticulous and organized, helped where she could, while Emma darted around, testing boundaries at every turn. By the time the family piled into their old sedan, sunlight fully breaking over the horizon, Daniel felt a familiar mix of fatigue and resolve. Driving the girls to school, he reflected on the challenges that life had thrown at him. Raising 2 children as a single parent was no small feat. Every day was a tightrope walk between work, household responsibilities, and making sure his daughters grew up happy, confident, and loved. Yet despite the struggle, there was beauty in these ordinary moments. Sophie chattered excitedly about a school project, her animated gestures punctuating every sentence, while Emma leaned over, sharing a story about a stray kitten she had found on their street. Daniel smiled, keeping one hand on the wheel and the other ready to steady any sudden moves from the energetic 7-year-old. Life had been far from easy. His wife, a kind-hearted woman with a laugh that could light up a room, had passed away unexpectedly 5 years ago. The memory of her was a constant presence, gentle, loving, and hauntingly absent. Daniel often wondered how he would have coped without the daughters who now relied on him entirely. Raising them had been an uphill battle, but they were his motivation, his purpose, and his greatest joy, despite financial struggles, long workdays, and the exhaustion of single parenthood. Daniel had cultivated a home filled with love, warmth, and laughter. Their home may have lacked the luxuries that other families enjoyed, but it was rich in the things that mattered most: trust, compassion, and an unbreakable bond between father and daughters, as they dropped Sophie at school first, and then Emma at her kindergarten. Daniel felt the quiet pride of a man who, despite life's hardships, had kept his family together. He waved goodbye to the girls, watching them scamper off into the building, their backpacks bouncing, their laughter ringing in the morning air. The drive home was quiet, and Daniel's mind wandered to the errands he had to run: grocery shopping, bills, and work calls. He had no idea that today, an ordinary day like any other, would soon turn extraordinary. A simple roadside event would change the lives of all 3 of them forever, setting in motion a chain of events that would test their courage, compassion, and the strength of their family bond. Daniel pulled the car into the driveway of their modest home, unaware that fate was waiting just beyond the bend in the road. The ordinary life he had built with his daughters, full of small victories, laughter, and love, was about to collide with a moment that would alter everything. The drive home had been uneventful, the quiet kind of afternoon Daniel usually welcomed after the chaos of the morning school run. The sun was beginning to dip toward the horizon, casting golden streaks across the quiet suburban streets. Emma chattered endlessly from the back seat, recounting her day at kindergarten, while Sophie recounted every detail of her class project. Daniel smiled, savoring the normalcy, little suspecting that life was about to throw an unexpected challenge their way. It started with a sharp flash in the corner of his eye. A luxury car overturned on the roadside, its tires spinning weakly in the soft grass, smoke curling from under the hood. Daniel's grip tightened on the steering wheel. The sound of bending metal and shattered glass faintly echoed in the stillness of the evening. He pulled over, his heart pounding. "Dad, what is it?" Emma asked, her voice small and curious. Daniel exhaled slowly, trying to steady his racing mind. "Stay here," he said, his voice firm but calm. "We need to be careful." Sophie's eyes widened, a mix of fear and excitement. "Is someone hurt?" she asked, already leaning forward to get a better look. Daniel didn't answer immediately. He parked the car a safe distance away and stepped out, scanning the scene. The overturned vehicle was sleek, unmistakably expensive, its silver paint glinting under the dying sunlight. The driver's side door was crushed, and he could see a figure slumped inside, motionless. Panic flickered through him, but it was quickly replaced by determination. "Dad." "She's moving," Emma called from the back seat, pointing with her tiny hand. Daniel hurried forward, assessing the situation. The woman inside the vehicle appeared conscious, but severely injured. Cuts streaked her face, and blood trickled from a gash on her forehead. Her breathing was shallow, her body tense and rigid. The sight could have frozen a lesser man in fear. But Daniel's instincts kicked in. "Emma, Sophie, stay here," he called, trying to mask the urgency in his voice. "I need you both to stay in the car. Keep calm." Emma's lower lip quivered, but she obeyed, clutching her stuffed bunny tightly. Sophie's hands trembled, yet she nodded resolutely. Understanding the gravity of the moment, Daniel approached the car, his heart hammering. He crouched beside the driver's side window and gently tapped it. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" The woman's eyelids fluttered, and she groaned softly. "Help, please." Her voice was hoarse, weak. "Don't worry," Daniel said, his voice firm yet reassuring. "We're going to get you out safely. Can you move your legs?" She shook her head slightly, pain flickering across her face. Daniel noted the severity of her injuries, the gash on her forehead, the bruising along her arms, and a suspicious twist of her ankle visible through torn shoes. He knew he needed to act carefully, or he could worsen her injuries. "All right," he muttered under his breath. "We need to stabilize her and get her out." Sophie, unable to resist, had followed a few steps behind him. Daniel quickly motioned for her to stay back, but her eyes, wide with concern, followed every move. Emma peeked out the car window, whispering encouragement to her father. Daniel quickly scanned the surrounding area and spotted a long piece of sturdy cloth in the car's back seat. His daughter's picnic blanket, which he had left in the trunk. He tore it into strips to use as makeshift bandages. With methodical care, he wrapped the woman's bleeding forehead, applied pressure to slow the blood flow, and gently assessed her body for other injuries. "Sir, can you move me?" she whispered weakly. "No," Daniel replied gently. "You need to stay as still as possible. We're going to help you, but we have to be careful. I'm going to pull you out slowly." The minutes stretched into what felt like hours, yet Daniel worked with calm precision. He climbed carefully into the wreck, supporting her upper body, whispering words of reassurance. "You're going to be okay, I've got you. Just a little longer." Emma and Sophie watched from a safe distance, tears in their eyes, holding each other's hands. "I'm scared, Sophie," Emma whispered. "I know," Sophie replied softly. "But Dad's strong. He'll save her." Finally, with a concerted effort, Daniel eased the woman out of the car. Her body sagged with weakness, and he felt the strain in his own arms, but he refused to falter. Placing her gently onto the ground, he wrapped a warm jacket around her to shield her from the chill evening air. The woman's eyes fluttered open, meeting his gaze with a mixture of fear and gratitude. "Thank you. Thank you so much," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You're safe now," Daniel said firmly. "We're not leaving you here. Help is on the way." By that time, a neighbor had noticed the commotion and dialed emergency services. The distant wail of sirens grew louder, signaling the imminent arrival of medical personnel. Daniel kept talking to the woman, distracting her from the pain and fear, and the daughters stayed close, offering small smiles and gentle reassurances. When the paramedics arrived, Daniel explained everything clearly: the accident, her injuries, and the first aid he had administered. The team quickly took over, stabilizing the woman further and preparing her for transport to the hospital. Before she was lifted into the ambulance, she turned to Daniel and his daughters, her eyes glistening with tears. You saved my life," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't know how to thank you." Daniel shrugged, his expression modest. "We're just glad you're okay. That's all that matters." Sophie and Emma waved timidly, their little faces glowing with pride. Daniel watched them, a swell of emotion rising in his chest. He knew he had done the right thing, not because of heroism or recognition, but because it was the only thing a father could do when confronted with someone in danger. Even as the ambulance drove away, Daniel felt a strange sense of anticipation. The encounter had been extraordinary, yes, but the ripple effects were yet to be realized. Little did he know, this injured woman was not just any stranger. She was wealthy, influential, and about to enter their lives in ways that would change everything. That evening, as they drove home, Sophie and Emma chattered excitedly about the rescue. "Dad, we really saved her." Emma, squealed. Sophie, more contemplative, added, "And she's going to remember us. She'll never forget what we did." Daniel glanced at his daughters, a proud, tender smile on his face. "It doesn't matter if she remembers us or not," he said. "What matters is that we did the right thing. That's enough." Yet, deep down, he felt a subtle shift, a sense that their ordinary lives, already full of challenges and love, were about to intersect with a world far beyond their own. A world of wealth, influence, and unexpected opportunity. And soon, the family's courage, compassion, and resilience would be tested in ways they had never imagined. For Daniel and his daughters, the rescue had been instinctive, natural, an act of humanity. But for the woman in the ambulance, it would mark the beginning of a bond that could alter the course of all their lives forever. The hospital was a whirlwind of activity. Nurses and doctors moved with precision and purpose, their professional efficiency contrasting sharply with the chaos of the roadside rescue earlier that evening. Daniel Carter waited anxiously in the waiting room, Sophie leaning against him for reassurance, Emma fidgeting with a corner of her jacket, her eyes wide with curiosity and concern. Hours passed in an uneasy blur. Daniel's hands, calloused from work and tireless care for his daughters, were tightly clasped together. He had expected a quick visit, a brief checkup, and perhaps some gratitude, but the reality was far more complicated. The woman they had saved was stable, but she had sustained multiple injuries, a fractured arm, deep lacerations on her face, and a mild concussion. She required observation and treatment that would keep her in the hospital at least overnight. Finally, a nurse approached. "Mr. Carter, the woman you rescued is awake. You can see her now, but she's weak. Please be gentle." Daniel nodded, rising to his feet, Sophie and Emma close behind him. The nurse led them down a quiet corridor to a private room bathed in soft, antiseptic light. The woman lay in a hospital bed, her luxurious clothing replaced by a hospital gown. Her golden brown hair, though disheveled and damp from the accident, framed her pale, bruised face. A faint scar ran across her temple, and a patch of her hair had been shaved for treatment. Despite this, there was an undeniable elegance about her, an aura of refinement and wealth that even the sterile hospital room could not diminish. She opened her eyes as they entered, and Daniel felt an almost imperceptible shiver run down his spine. Her gaze was sharp, assessing, and slightly wary. "Mr. Carter," she said in a voice that was at once soft and commanding, "thank you for helping me." Daniel stepped forward cautiously. "You don't need to thank me, ma'am. We just did what anyone would do." The woman's lips pressed into a faint smile, but her eyes remained guarded. "You're modest," she said. "I can see that. But your daughters, they were with you." Sophie nodded politely, her hands folded neatly in front of her. Emma waved shyly, clutching her small stuffed bunny. "Yes, ma'am," Daniel said. "They helped in their own ways." Emma stayed calm in the car, and Sophie, "Well, she kept me organized while I got you out safely." The woman's gaze softened briefly as it landed on the girls. She studied their bright, curious faces, the way they clung to their father for reassurance. There was something striking in the contrast between the innocence of the children and the harsh, unpredictable world outside. "I don't usually rely on strangers," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "But today, I had no choice. You were my only hope." Daniel felt the weight of her words, but he waved it off gently. "We didn't do it for thanks. We did it because it was the right thing to do. That's all that matters." The woman's expression flickered with a mix of surprise and something deeper, curiosity, perhaps even admiration. She had spent her life surrounded by wealth and power, people who bowed, flattered, or served her every whim. Genuine kindness, untainted by ulterior motives, was foreign to her. And yet here it was, embodied in a man who struggled to make ends meet, and two children who had done nothing more than act from instinct. "May I ask your name?" she said softly. "Daniel Carter," he replied. "And these are my daughters, Sophie and Emma." "Cassandra Whitmore," she said, her tone polite but distant. I don't usually meet people like you." Sophie tilted her head slightly, curiosity bright in her eyes. "What do you mean, Ms. Whitmore?" Cassandra hesitated, glancing away as if unsure how much to reveal. "I've lived a very protected life. Wealth shields you from the ordinary world, and you are ordinary, yet extraordinary in a way I cannot explain." Emma, ever candid, tilted her head and said simply, "We're just nice, Ms. Whitmore. You needed help, so we helped you." Daniel tried to suppress a chuckle. Emma had a way of speaking truth simply and directly. a trait that cut through pretense and made even the most sophisticated words seem unnecessary. Cassandra looked at the two girls again, and for the first time, the guarded walls around her heart began to crumble slightly. She was used to people praising her for her wealth, beauty, or influence, but these children and their father had offered her nothing but compassion and bravery without expectation, without condition. Over the next hour, Daniel and the girls helped Cassandra get comfortable in her hospital bed. They adjusted her pillows, fetched water, and talked quietly to distract her from the pain. Sophie asked thoughtful questions about her hobbies and interests, while Emma's constant chatter about school stories brought a rare, genuine smile to Cassandra's lips. "You have remarkable children," Cassandra said softly, her eyes misting slightly. "And a remarkable father." Daniel shook his head. "We're just a family, doing our best. That's all anyone can do." Cassandra studied him for a long moment, sensing the quiet strength beneath his humble demeanor. She had encountered men of influence, power, and money, but few had the kind of integrity Daniel carried in every action. Here was someone who acted out of principle, not ambition. Courage, not ego. Cassandra began, hesitating. "I don't know how to repay you. Not just for saving my life, but for showing me humanity." Daniel offered a small smile. "You don't need to repay us. You just need to get better. That's enough." But Cassandra's thoughts were already racing. She had survived countless challenges in her life, but nothing had shaken her worldview like this encounter. Ordinary people, unremarkable in the eyes of society, had saved her. And more than that, their lives, simple, honest, filled with love and resilience, were something she longed to understand, to be a part of. As the evening stretched on, Cassandra began to relax, allowing herself to feel safe in their presence. She shared fragments of her life, cautiously tales of business deals, philanthropic work, and the loneliness that often accompanied her wealth. Daniel listened without judgment, offering comfort when needed and allowing her to speak freely. The daughters, with their innocent curiosity, asked questions that made Cassandra laugh. The sound light and musical in the quiet hospital room. For the first time in years, Cassandra felt a warmth she had almost forgotten, the warmth of genuine human connection, untainted by status or wealth. She realized that her life of luxury, though comfortable and protected, had been hollow without the kind of relationships the Carters offered, honest, selfless, and deeply heartfelt. By the time Daniel prepared to leave for the night, Cassandra was smiling genuinely, her injuries temporarily forgotten in the glow of trust and new friendship. "Thank you," she said again, her voice sincere, "for everything. I don't know what the future holds, but I want to know more about you, all of you." Daniel nodded, a mixture of pride and caution in his eyes. "We'll see how things go. But remember, Ms. Whitmore, kindness and bravery aren't measured by wealth or titles. They're measured by actions." As they drove home, Sophie and Emma chattered excitedly about the evening, recounting every detail, while Daniel quietly reflected on the encounter. Something told him that meeting Cassandra Whitmore was only the beginning, a catalyst that would inevitably bring extraordinary changes to their ordinary lives. For Cassandra, lying in the hospital bed that night, The simple act of being rescued had opened her eyes to a world she had never truly known. A world where wealth did not define people, but their courage, compassion, and love for one another did. And as she drifted into a restless sleep, she wondered how this family, this ordinary father and his daughters, could so profoundly affect her life, and how profoundly her life could affect theirs in return. The days that followed Cassandra Whitmore's rescue were unlike anything the Carter family had experienced. What had begun as a simple act of bravery on a quiet suburban road now bloomed into a delicate, almost fragile connection between two worlds, the ordinary life of a single father and his daughters, and the polished high society existence of a wealthy woman. Cassandra's hospital stay was brief but cautious. Her injuries required rest, but she was determined to regain some sense of normalcy. Daniel, ever practical, insisted on accompanying her home once she was discharged. He couldn't leave her alone until he was sure she could manage her recovery safely, not out of obligation, but because he had seen firsthand what fragility looked like, and he knew her independence might make her ignore her own limits. When they arrived at the Carter home, Cassandra hesitated at the threshold. She had expected modesty, perhaps even discomfort, but what greeted her was warmth. The small living room, tidy but clearly lived in, was filled with the soft hum of domestic life. Emma and Sophie had already taken it upon themselves to arrange a makeshift recovery corner for her on the couch, complete with blankets, pillows, and a stack of coloring books to keep the younger child occupied. "I don't know what to say," Cassandra murmured, her voice soft, almost lost in awe. "No need to say anything," Daniel replied with a faint smile. "Just rest. That's all that matters." At first, Cassandra was cautious. She hovered on the edge of the couch, her movements precise, deliberate. She wore a carefully measured expression, a mask of elegance and control. Yet the girls were undeterred by her aloofness. Emma plopped herself onto the floor beside Cassandra, bouncing a little ball and chattering endlessly about her school day. "Do you want to see my drawing?" "It's a rainbow with a dragon," Emma asked, holding it up proudly. Cassandra smiled tentatively, marveling at the unfiltered joy of the child. "That's very impressive," she said, her voice softening. Sophie, more analytical, approached with a small notebook. "I made a schedule to help you recover," she said, handing it over. "Water every hour, light stretching when you feel able, and plenty of rest. You don't have to follow it exactly, but it might help." Cassandra felt a warmth she hadn't known in years. The children weren't concerned with her wealth, her appearance, or her status. They were simply concerned with her well-being. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly seen, not as a millionaire, not as a figure of societal expectation, but as a person. Over the next several days, the bond between Cassandra and the Carters deepened. Daniel cooked simple meals while Cassandra rested, and the children insisted on helping. Emma, with her boundless energy, became Cassandra's unofficial assistant, fetching ice packs, arranging pillows, and occasionally bringing snacks she might enjoy. Sophie, with her methodical nature, helped monitor her exercises and medications, turning the recovery process into a cooperative and almost playful routine. One afternoon, Daniel brought out a small, battered board game from a cupboard. "Thought we could have a little fun while you're here," he said, setting the game on the coffee table. Cassandra hesitated. She was unused to these informal, chaotic interactions, preferring structured, controlled environments. But the girl's infectious excitement was impossible to resist. "All right," she said finally, forcing a small smile, "I'll play. But I warn you, I'm competitive," Emma cheered. "You have to beat us." The hours passed in laughter, teasing, and playful competition. Cassandra found herself genuinely enjoying the experience. She laughed freely, something she realized she hadn't done in years, without pretense. The Carters' home, small and unassuming, was filled with warmth that money could not buy. During the evenings, the children shared stories of their lives, school adventures, little disagreements, moments of triumph and failure. Cassandra listened intently, asking questions and offering encouragement. Her presence was not overbearing. She didn't seek to control or impress. Instead, she allowed herself to be part of their world, learning its rhythms and values. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned golden, Cassandra sat on the porch with Daniel while the children played in the yard. She had a small cup of tea in her hands, carefully sipping, and for the first time, she allowed herself to speak candidly. "I've lived in a world where everyone knows your name but nobody knows you," she said quietly. "Wealth, influence. It creates walls. I never realized how lonely life could be when people see only what you have, not who you are." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "Life can be hard, but it's the people you let in, the ones who care about you, not your possessions, that make it worth living." Cassandra's eyes softened, reflecting gratitude and perhaps a hint of sorrow. "You and your daughters. You've shown me that even ordinary lives can be extraordinary in kindness and courage." Daniel shrugged modestly. "We're just living as best we can. You'd be surprised how much joy there is in ordinary moments." The following days brought small but meaningful milestones. Cassandra learned to embrace domestic life in ways she had never imagined, helping bake cookies with the girls, listening to Emma's endless questions about animals, and even participating in Sophie's carefully planned activities. The children flourished in return. Seeing her vulnerability and gentle guidance inspired them to be brave, thoughtful, and kind in ways they hadn't fully understood before. There were humorous moments too. Emma once attempted to paint Cassandra's nails while she was resting, leaving streaks of vibrant color on her fingers and a trail of giggles behind. Cassandra laughed heartily, a sound that felt like music in the Carter home. Sophie, meanwhile, meticulously organized a first aid kit for Cassandra, complete with labels and charts, causing the millionaire woman to chuckle at the child's precise, almost businesslike approach. Through these moments, trust grew steadily. Cassandra began to confide in Daniel about her life, the pressures of managing vast wealth, and the isolation it had brought her. Daniel, in turn, shared the challenges and joys of raising two daughters alone. Each conversation wove their lives closer together, forging bonds that transcended class, wealth, and societal expectation. One afternoon, while the girls were at school, Cassandra helped Daniel prepare a simple lunch, She was clumsy in the kitchen, spilling flour and knocking over a bowl. But Daniel's patient guidance and the quiet laughter they shared created a rare, serene intimacy. "You know," Cassandra said, wiping her hands on a towel, "I never thought I could feel normal. Not just rich and protected, but normal. And happy." Daniel smiled softly. "That's the beauty of life. Happiness isn't bought, it's built. And sometimes, the people you meet along the way help build it for you." By the end of the week, Cassandra's initial wariness had completely melted. She trusted the Carters implicitly and had grown fond of the girls in ways she hadn't expected. Emma's innocence and Sophie's thoughtful nature had opened her heart, and Daniel's quiet strength and humility had earned her respect and admiration. As she prepared to leave the Carter home for her first walk outside since the accident, Cassandra paused at the door and turned to Daniel. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "Not just for saving me, but for letting me be part of your world. I've never known kindness like this before." Daniel shook his head modestly. "We didn't do anything extraordinary. You just needed help. That's all." But Cassandra knew better. What she had experienced was rare courage, compassion, and selflessness in its purest form. She had been rescued not only physically but emotionally. And in the days that followed, she knew that her presence in the Carters' lives would not just be a passing episode. It would be the beginning of something profound. A bond that would alter the course of all their lives forever. The days after, Cassandra's stay with the Carters passed in a gentle rhythm of laughter, conversation, and small domestic triumphs. Yet beneath the surface, a subtle change was underway. Daniel noticed it first, a shift in his daughter's confidence, an ease in their smiles that seemed new, brighter. And while the Carters had always managed with resilience and resourcefulness, the presence of Cassandra Whitmore was beginning to open doors they had never imagined. It began one Saturday morning. Cassandra, now fully recovered, insisted on accompanying Daniel and the girls to the local grocery store. Daniel protested lightly, not wanting to impose, but Cassandra's firm yet warm demeanor left little room for refusal. At the store, her eyes sparkled with curiosity, and she navigated the aisles with the children, pointing out small but practical ways to stretch the grocery budget. "You know," Cassandra said, "balancing a basket with grace, you could actually save more if you planned meals for the week. It sounds tedious, but it's surprisingly satisfying." Daniel chuckled. "We've done meal plans before, but it's hard to stick with them." Sophie's eyes lit up. "We could try it again. We can make a chart." Even Emma seemed to understand the significance of the lesson, nodding solemnly while gripping a bag of apples. Cassandra's influence was subtle but immediate. Her practical insights, delivered without judgment, began seeping into the family's routines, showing them that small changes could yield meaningful results. But Cassandra's impact went far beyond grocery lists. One afternoon, she invited Daniel and the girls to her office, a sleek glass-walled building in the heart of the city. Daniel hesitated. This was a world he had never imagined entering. Polished floors, luxury cars, and executives bustling about in crisp suits. But Cassandra guided them gently, her reassurance helping him navigate the unfamiliar territory inside her office. Cassandra began discussing opportunities that could tangibly improve their lives. "Daniel," she said, her tone measured yet warm. "You've been working tirelessly, but your potential is far greater than your current circumstances allow. I'd like to offer some assistance, not charity, but opportunities to build a sustainable future for you and your daughters." Daniel's brows furrowed. "I don't know, Ms. Whitmore. I can't accept that. I appreciate everything, truly, but we'll manage." Cassandra shook her head. "This isn't about handouts. It's about support, mentorship, guidance. You have remarkable skills, resilience, intelligence, integrity. Skills that, with some resources, could take you far." Sophie, curious and perceptive, leaned forward. "Like a scholarship?" she asked. Cassandra smiled. "Exactly. Education, training, experiences. Things your family deserves but may not have had access to yet." Over the following weeks, Cassandra introduced subtle yet transformative opportunities. She helped Sophie enroll in an advanced academic program that catered to her interests in science and engineering. Emma, with her creativity and boundless energy, was given access to art and music classes that nurtured her imagination. Daniel, initially hesitant, was guided toward professional development workshops and small business seminars, helping him expand his skills and explore avenues he had never considered. Each opportunity brought a mix of excitement and apprehension. Daniel worried about being out of his depth, about taking what he perceived as charity. But Cassandra's approach was careful and respectful. She framed everything as empowerment, not handouts. "This is about building the life you deserve," she told him. "Not for me, not for anyone else, for your family." The changes were noticeable almost immediately. Sophie thrived in her new academic environment, her curiosity and intellect flourishing under the guidance she received. She returned home each day with new ideas, questions, and discoveries, sharing them eagerly with Daniel and Emma. Emma, in turn, flourished in her artistic endeavors. Cassandra encouraged her imaginative spirit, praising her creations and helping her showcase her work in small community exhibitions. Daniel, for the first time in years, felt a sense of professional pride that went beyond mere survival. The seminars, mentorship, and networking opportunities opened doors he had never imagined. His confidence grew alongside the newfound prospects, and he began to envision a future that was no longer defined by struggle, but by potential and achievement. But along with these opportunities came subtle challenges. The Carters' humble life suddenly intersected with a world of wealth and expectation that was foreign to them. Daniel grappled with a complex mix of gratitude and pride. He didn't want to be indebted to anyone, no matter how generous or kind. Cassandra, aware of his internal struggle, approached him gently. "Daniel," she said one evening as they reviewed Sophie's progress report, "this isn't about owing anyone. It's about opening doors that were always meant to be open. You've earned every bit of this through courage, integrity, and your love for your daughters." Her words resonated deeply. He realized that accepting help didn't diminish his hard work or the values he had instilled in his children. It simply meant that his efforts were now amplified, supported by someone who recognized their worth beyond professional and educational opportunities. Cassandra also fostered personal growth for the family. she introduced the Carters to experiences that broadened their horizons: museum visits, cultural events, and even simple outings like picnics in scenic parks they had never visited. Each activity was designed not only to educate, but to instill confidence, resilience, and a sense of belonging in a world they had previously felt excluded from. The daughters, naturally perceptive, noticed the subtle changes in their father. Daniel, though always strong and dependable, seemed lighter, more relaxed, and increasingly optimistic. His laughter became more frequent, his patience more abundant. They understood, even if only intuitively, that Cassandra's presence and guidance were not just opportunities for learning, but a bridge to a life they had only glimpsed in dreams. One evening, as the family sat together in the living room after a particularly productive day of lessons, discussions, and creative projects, Cassandra shared a quiet reflection. "You've all shown me what I've been missing in my life," she said softly, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and wonder. "I've always had wealth, but I lacked connection, humility, and the simple joys of family. You've reminded me of what truly matters." Emma leaned over and hugged her tightly. "We're happy you're here, Ms. Whitmore," she whispered. Sophie added, "You make our home brighter. And we make yours, too, I think." Daniel smiled, a rare, deep expression of contentment. "It's been life-changing for all of us," he said. Cassandra nodded, understanding the truth in his words. The rescue on the roadside had been the spark, but what had followed was transformation. Trust had been built, bonds had deepened, and opportunities, both tangible and intangible, had begun to reshape their lives in profound ways. Yet, even amidst the joy and gratitude, Cassandra's presence also brought subtle tension. Their small, ordinary life was now intertwined with hers in ways that required adaptation and understanding. Daniel worried about losing the simplicity and authenticity of their family dynamic. He feared that wealth, privilege, and external influence might overshadow the values he had worked so hard to instill. But Cassandra, perceptive and empathetic, navigated these concerns delicately. She emphasized that her role was to support, not dominate; to empower, not replace. Every suggestion, every opportunity, every moment of guidance was carefully tailored to respect the family's integrity and values. By the end of the week, the transformation was undeniable. Sophie excelled academically, Emma's creativity blossomed, and Daniel began to see a path forward that was once unimaginable. Cassandra had not just changed their circumstances, she had nurtured their confidence, resilience, and belief in themselves. As the sun set over the Carter household one evening, Daniel looked at his daughters, their faces radiant with hope and excitement, and then at Cassandra, whose presence had become a cherished and integral part of their lives. He realized that the rescue on that quiet roadside had been more than a moment of bravery. It had been the catalyst for a journey that would forever alter the course of all their lives. In that moment, Daniel understood the profound truth. Life-changing opportunities were not merely about wealth or influence. They were about courage, kindness, and the willingness to embrace new possibilities when they appeared. And he had found all three in the most unexpected way. Through a chance encounter and a family willing to act with heart, as life began to settle into a new rhythm. The Carter family felt the quiet joy of transformation. Sophie excelled in her advanced classes, Emma's creativity flourished, and Daniel's professional opportunities had expanded beyond anything he had imagined. Yet, as often happens when ordinary lives brush against worlds of wealth and influence, challenges soon emerged. It began subtly, almost imperceptibly. The first signs came in casual remarks and sideways glances from friends and neighbors. Daniel overheard whispers at the hardware store about the millionaire who's taken an interest in the family and how their lives have suddenly improved, while many meant no harm. Gossip carried undertones that planted seeds of insecurity in Daniel's mind. Even within the family, there were moments of tension. Sophie, eager to embrace her new opportunities, sometimes clashed with Daniel's cautious nature. She wanted to push forward, to seize every chance Cassandra offered. But Daniel struggled with fear that their ordinary values might be compromised by wealth and status. One afternoon, as they returned from a city trip arranged by Cassandra, a museum visit followed by lunch at a bustling cafe, Daniel's unease reached a tipping point. He had overheard Emma quietly asking, "Dad, does Ms. Whitmore really like us? Or is she just helping because she feels sorry for us?" The question cut deep. Daniel forced a smile, trying to mask the doubt that had begun to gnaw at him. "She likes us, Emma, I promise. She's a friend, not someone who wants anything from us." But reassurance alone couldn't erase the subtle unease building around them. Cassandra herself noticed the ripple effects. During a quiet conversation in the living room one evening, she broached the topic gently. "Daniel," she said, choosing her words carefully, "I've noticed some tension. You've worked so hard to raise Sophie and Emma, and now opportunities are appearing so quickly. I want to make sure these changes don't cause stress or resentment." Daniel sighed, rubbing his temple. "It's not you, Ms. Whitmore. It's complicated. People see the improvements, and suddenly everyone has an opinion. And sometimes I worry about losing what we've built, our values, our bond, the ordinary life that makes us who we are." Cassandra nodded thoughtfully. "I understand. My world is very different. I don't want to disrupt your family, only enhance it. But challenges will come, Daniel. People may question motives, misjudge actions, and misunderstand intentions. We need to navigate carefully." Her words proved prescient sooner than expected. The first significant challenge arrived in the form of a professional rivalry. Cassandra's assistant, a man named Marcus, expressed skepticism about the Carters' involvement in her life. "They're good people. But this is your world, Ms. Whitmore," he said one afternoon, tapping his tablet with frustration. "You can't mix ordinary family dynamics with business decisions. You'll create problems, misunderstandings, mistakes, and distractions." Cassandra, however, remained firm. "Marcus, Daniel, and his daughters have integrity and courage. Their lives are genuine, and their values align with mine in ways many people in my world cannot offer. I trust them, and I will not let fear dictate kindness." Marcus shook his head but relented, understanding he could not sway her. Yet the tension lingered. A reminder that not everyone in Cassandra's world would accept or respect the Carters. Then came the more personal challenge, misunderstandings with the community. One morning, Daniel arrived at work to find a local business acquaintance brimming with curiosity and thinly veiled suspicion. "I heard the millionaire woman has taken an interest in your family," the man said casually, though his tone suggested judgment. "That must be convenient for you." Daniel's jaw tightened. "It's not about convenience," he replied evenly. "It's about trust, kindness, and opportunity. That's all." But the seed of doubt had been planted. Rumors began circulating, whispers that Daniel's family was seeking personal gain or exploiting Cassandra's generosity. Though he knew the truth, defending against gossip consumed emotional energy, especially when his daughters innocently repeated overheard remarks. Emma once asked, "Dad, are people mad at us because Ms. Whitmore helps us?" Daniel knelt, holding her shoulders firmly. "No, Emma. Some people don't understand, and that's okay. We know what's right, and that's what matters." Even Sophie, older and more perceptive, struggled with the conflicting emotions. She wanted to embrace every opportunity but feared social scrutiny or resentment from peers. One evening, as the family gathered for dinner, she hesitated before announcing her excitement about an upcoming academic competition sponsored by Cassandra, Daddy. "Some kids at school said we're lucky only because Ms. Whitmore wants something from us," Sophie said quietly, pushing peas around her plate. Daniel reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "Ignore them. We know our hearts, and that's all that matters. You've earned this, Sophie. Don't let anyone's words take that away from you." Cassandra, sensing the tension, arranged a private conversation with Daniel. "We must protect them," she said. "Opportunities are wonderful, but we must ensure they are nurtured, not pressured. Their growth depends on trust and patience, not envy or expectation." Another challenge emerged when Cassandra's social circle became aware of the Carters. Some wealthy acquaintances assumed ulterior motives, questioning Daniel's intentions and the integrity of his family. Invitations became subtle tests, probing whether the Carters could navigate the refined world without missteps. At first, Daniel bristled, feeling the weight of scrutiny and the possibility of judgment. But Cassandra guided him patiently, teaching subtle etiquette, social nuances, and confidence. Slowly, he learned to assert himself without losing authenticity, to answer questions politely without defensiveness, and to navigate complex social dynamics without compromising his family's values. The daughters, too, grew stronger. Emma learned resilience, understanding that not everyone's opinion mattered, and Sophie gained confidence in expressing herself, balancing humility with poise. Cassandra's mentorship extended beyond education and professional guidance. She nurtured emotional intelligence, resilience, and self-assurance, preparing the Carters to face external challenges without fear. Despite the obstacles, trust within the family deepened. Daniel and Cassandra shared candid conversations about expectations, fears, and boundaries, ensuring that opportunities would strengthen rather than disrupt the family dynamic. The daughters thrived under Cassandra's guidance, discovering talents and potential that had once seemed out of reach. But the challenges were never far away. Gossip continued to swirl, business rivals watched closely, and even well-meaning neighbors occasionally misjudged intentions. Each incident tested the family's patience and resolve. Yet, with every trial, Daniel's confidence grew. His daughter's resilience strengthened, and Cassandra's commitment deepened. By the end of the month, the Carters had weathered numerous challenges. From gossip and judgment to subtle scrutiny and misunderstanding, they emerged stronger, bonded by shared values and trust. Prepared to face the next phase of transformation, Daniel reflected quietly one evening, watching Sophie and Emma play in the yard while Cassandra sat nearby, reading a book aloud to them. Despite the challenges, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. Life had introduced them to a world they never imagined, but they had navigated it with courage, integrity, and love. Cassandra, for her part, realized that her initial hesitation to involve the Carters in her world had been unfounded. The family's authenticity, resilience, and unwavering integrity had proven that opportunity, when paired with heart, could create extraordinary outcomes, even amidst the scrutiny and skepticism of others. The roadside rescue, once a fleeting moment of heroism, had set in motion a series of events that would challenge, test, and ultimately transform their lives. And as Daniel watched the golden light of the setting sun illuminate the faces of his daughters, he understood that no external challenge, no rumor, no scrutiny, no obstacle could undermine the bonds they had built. Through adversity, trust deepened. Through scrutiny, resilience strengthened. And through genuine connection, life-changing opportunities became more than gifts. They became the foundation of a future forged by courage, compassion, and integrity. The family had faced their first major test in this new chapter, and they had emerged united, stronger, and more confident than ever before. And even as challenges loomed on the horizon, Daniel knew that together, with love, patience, and trust, they could face anything. Months had passed since that fateful roadside rescue. The Carters' lives, once ordinary and predictable, had evolved into a tapestry of new experiences, growth, and unexpected opportunities. Yet it was not wealth alone that had transformed them, but the lessons learned, the trust earned, and the bonds that had been forged through courage, kindness, and resilience. Daniel stood at the doorway of his modest home, watching Sophie and Emma play in the yard. Sophie was balancing carefully on the swing, a look of concentration on her face, while Emma's laughter rang out as she chased a stray butterfly, her curls bouncing in the sunlight. Cassandra, now a familiar presence in their lives, sat nearby with a notebook in her lap, jotting down observations and occasionally reading aloud. Her soft voice mingling with the children's joy, Daniel's heart swelled with pride. The challenges they had faced, gossip, scrutiny, and the subtle pressures of a world unfamiliar to them, had not only been overcome, but had strengthened their family. He realized that the courage and kindness that had saved Cassandra's life on that roadside had ultimately saved his family from stagnation, opening doors to a life far beyond what he had dared to imagine. Cassandra looked up from her notebook, her eyes meeting Daniel's with warmth and understanding. "They've grown so much," she said softly. "Not just academically or creatively, but in character. You've done an extraordinary job, Daniel." Daniel shook his head modestly. "I didn't do it alone. We all did it together. The girls, they're remarkable. And well, You've helped guide us in ways I never thought possible." Cassandra smiled. "Perhaps. But it was your courage, your integrity, and the love you have for your daughters that made this possible. I only showed you doors that were always meant to be open." The transformation was evident in every aspect of their lives. Sophie, now more confident and ambitious, had won a regional academic competition, her victory celebrated not only by her teachers and peers but by Cassandra, who had mentored her throughout the preparation. Emma's artistic talents had blossomed, with her paintings displayed in a local gallery, a moment of pride for the entire family and a testament to Cassandra's encouragement and support. Daniel, too, had grown professionally. The workshops, mentorship, and guidance Cassandra had facilitated had opened doors he never imagined, allowing him to secure a better paying position that provided stability and a future for his daughters. Yet even with these new opportunities, he remained grounded, humble, and determined to instill values of honesty, resilience, and empathy in his children. The final test of their transformation came unexpectedly. Cassandra invited the family to an event celebrating her philanthropic initiatives, a gala attended by influential figures and business leaders. Daniel felt a twinge of apprehension. The world of wealth and sophistication was intimidating, and he worried that the Carters might feel out of place. Yet when they arrived, the family found themselves welcomed warmly. Sophie navigated conversations with poise. Emma's charm and authenticity drew smiles from strangers, and Daniel, guided by Cassandra's quiet mentorship, held himself with quiet confidence. They realized that transformation was not about pretending to be someone else, but embracing who they were and letting their character shine. During the gala, Cassandra took a moment to address her guests. Her words, heartfelt and genuine, highlighted the importance of compassion, mentorship, and the power of ordinary people to effect extraordinary change. "I want to share a story," she began, her voice steady yet imbued with emotion. "A story about courage, kindness, and the transformative power of human connection. A single father and his 2 daughters rescued me from an accident, and in doing so, they opened my eyes to what truly matters: integrity, love, and resilience. This family, Daniel, Sophie, and Emma, has shown me that wealth is meaningless without heart, and that ordinary lives can inspire extraordinary change." As she spoke, the audience listened intently. Daniel felt a mixture of pride and humility as the spotlight shifted briefly to him and his daughters. The recognition was not about wealth or fame, but about their character, courage, and the positive impact of their actions. After the gala, as the family returned home, Daniel reflected on the journey. "We've come a long way," he said quietly, watching the city lights glimmer in the distance. Sophie leaned against him, her eyes bright with wonder. "Dad, we've learned so much. About courage. About kindness. About ourselves." Emma, holding Cassandra's hand, nodded. "And about helping others. We can make a difference too." Daniel smiled, feeling the full weight of their journey. The roadside rescue, once a fleeting moment of heroism, had set in motion a series of events that transformed not only Cassandra's life but their own. It had taught them that courage, integrity, and love could open doors to opportunity, trust, and growth, doors that had been closed for far too long. Cassandra, observing the family with quiet satisfaction, knew that her life had also been irrevocably changed. She had entered their world as a wealthy stranger, dependent on others' kindness and heroism, but she had emerged as a friend, mentor, and confidant, enriched not by wealth, but by the authenticity, resilience, and heart of the Carters. Over the following months, their lives continued to flourish. Sophie pursued her academic ambitions with renewed confidence, guided by mentors and supported by Cassandra's network. Emma's creativity continued to blossom, her artwork gaining recognition and inspiring other children in the community. Daniel's professional growth provided stability and security, allowing him to focus on nurturing the emotional and intellectual development of his daughters. Yet, beyond the tangible successes, the most profound transformation was the emotional and relational growth within the family. The Carters had learned to trust in others without fear, to embrace opportunities without losing their values, and to navigate challenges with courage and resilience. Cassandra, in turn, had discovered the richness of human connection, the beauty of selfless love, and the profound impact of ordinary people acting with extraordinary heart. One evening, as the family sat together in their backyard, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Daniel felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He watched his daughters, now confident, happy, and thriving, and he realized that their journey was only beginning. Cassandra's influence had provided opportunities, guidance, and inspiration, but it was their courage, integrity, and love for one another that had made transformation possible. Cassandra, sitting beside them, placed a gentle hand on Daniel's shoulder. "You've done everything right," she said softly. "I only showed you what was possible. The rest, the love, the resilience, the courage, that was all you." Daniel smiled, feeling the truth of her words resonate in his heart. "We were lucky to meet you," he said. "But even luck isn't enough without heart. And we've learned that, too." As night fell and the stars began to twinkle overhead, the family sat together in quiet reflection. The journey from a simple roadside rescue to a life transformed had been filled with challenges, growth, and unexpected joy. They had faced adversity, navigated new worlds, and discovered that true wealth lay not in possessions, but in character, courage, and the love they shared. And in that quiet, luminous moment, Daniel knew with certainty that their lives would never be the same, not because of wealth, opportunity, or recognition, but because they had discovered the extraordinary power of kindness, bravery, and family. The roadside rescue had been the spark, but the bond they had forged, the trust they had built, and the opportunities they had embraced had created a life far richer than any material fortune could offer. It was a life defined not by circumstance, but by courage, love, and the transformative power of human connection. The Carters were no longer just a single father and his daughters. They were a family strengthened by adversity, guided by integrity, and forever changed by the kindness of a stranger who became a mentor, a friend, and a part of their lives. And as they watched the stars shimmer above, each of them felt a deep, abiding certainty: the best was yet to come.